Welcome to Scrolling to Death. The focus of today's episode is cyberbullying, which will affect more than half of our kids if it hasn't already. Today, I have Maurine Molak with me today to share the story of her son, David, and the work, Maurine, that you are doing to help eliminate cyberbullying through education and legislation and legal action. So, Maurine, first, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Nikki. It's my pleasure.
So, can we just start off? Can you tell me about your son, David?
Sure. As a kid, David had a more sensitive side. He cared deeply about others. I often tell this story about when he first learned about the Holocaust, and he came running home with the book that he had been reading in school, and he said, "Mom, just tell me this isn't true. This didn't really happen, did it?" And I had to sit him down and talk to him about the terrible things that had happened in history and how these, people had been traumatized. And, of course, it was an age appropriate conversation, but I could tell that he was really impacted
Mm-hmm.
by what he had read. And so, growing up, David, he was the youngest of three. He had two older brothers. There was about 5 year gap between my middle son and David.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to run with the big boys. He
Yeah.
just wanted to be like his big brothers. And
Mm-hmm.
David was a basketball player. He was tall and lanky and still growing into his legs. He was great at basketball. He was on the school basketball team. He played AAU basketball,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a jokester, and he loved to make his friends laugh. And
Mm-hmm.
not the best student. He didn't really like school that much,
Mm-hmm.
but he was a great kid.
Yeah. And so what changed? I mean, or did anything change? Kind of where did things start to go awry?
Yeah, so we first noticed that things were not going well for David. It was after he was, like I said, he was playing basketball a lot. Well, he fractured his back
Mm,
from overuse, from playing too much basketball. And while he was rehabbing, he turned to online gaming and
mm-hmm.
social media to fill the void.
Mm-hmm.
And over a period of time, we started to see a change in his behavior. And it was little by little, it was sign after sign after sign. We would see him, you know, getting angry and aggressive when we would try to get him to stop. He was sneaking around, playing games when he wasn't supposed to. It was late at
Mm-hmm.
night, and we would catch him online playing, and he was using his devices more often. He was also not turning in his homework, telling us he was lying about completing his assignments.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started purchasing virtual assets without our permission online. And it really created a crisis in our family. And then, after we were seeking help, we were getting help. And back
Yeah.
then, so like this was 8 years ago, this was 2016. Actually,
Right.
it was 2015 when we started to
Uh-huh.
see him struggling with this.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was just emerging information was coming out about internet gaming disorder. And the help that we were getting at the time, they didn't really know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so, we were trying to get him help. He was in therapy. It wasn't working. And then the cyberbullying started. And he received, months of cyberbullying over a bunch of different platforms. Probably some of the worst incidents were through Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
where there was a post made, and they said, you know, sent him threatening comments, put him in a body bag, put him 6 feet under, told
Mm-hmm.
him he'd never go back to school. They were calling him an ape and a psycho, and this went on and on and on. And it went out to hundreds of people. I mean, it was shared and it was promoted online, and there were people that were even chiming in on it that
Mm-hmm.
David didn't even know. And, that was when we first found out about it. And when we were starting to dig in, we found out that the cyberbullying had been going on for months, but he didn't tell us because he already knew he was struggling with, a problem with addiction to
Yeah.
screening and gaming, and he was afraid we were going to take his phone away from him. And he
100%.
even
Right.
told us that.
Mm-hmm.
And the night before David died by suicide, he was added into a group me with a bunch of phone numbers he didn't have in his contacts, where
Mm-hmm.
they all said insulting comments to him about his looks and his mental health. And then they kicked him out of that group me. And that was the night before he took his life.
Who are these kids that do this type of bullying? Because obviously, if more than 50% of kids are getting cyberbullied, there's a bully for every kid getting cyberbullied. Are they just normal kids who think that they're joking around? What have you learned about the bullies?
I think that, you'll hear that often from the kids. I was just joking. But in our case, it was different. There was some jealousy over a girl, and there
Mm.
were some boys that targeted him specifically. But then it got out of control, and it was what we call a cyber mob. So you would have kids that would be adding an LOL, or this is so effing good, and a laughing emoji. And so the hundreds of comments and shares on this Instagram post, we believe, which was so damaging to him. It was
Oh,
like everybody in the world hated me, is what
yeah.
was going on in his mind. And like I said, there were people that were even chiming in that he didn't even know. So, I mean, it just went viral, and it was just this mob mentality of
Mm-hmm.
targeting him. And maybe some of them just thought it was funny, and they didn't,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't even know him.
Right.
But there were some kids that were involved that knew exactly what they were doing. And even that night, even there were some people, some other students that were watching what was happening and didn't even engage in it. And they actually went to their parents that night to tell them about what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And their parents told them not to get involved because they were afraid it was going to turn on their children if they intervened in that situation.
Oh, no.
Mhm.
Okay. God. So, do you think that these bullies actually, when they say I like suicide bait other kids, do you think that they mean it? They can't possibly mean it.
I mean, intent is really hard
Yeah.
to prove, right?
Right, right.
But when you put yourself in the shoes of the target of that,
Yeah.
you don't know what that child is going through at the
Mhm.
time. I mean,
Mhm.
life ebbs and flows, right? We all
Mhm.
have times in our lives where we're not doing well, and there's times in our lives when we're doing a lot better. And so being able to cope and be resilient
Mhm.
to that what happening to us in a moment, like our response to that,
Mhm.
can really matters. And the person on the other side of the screen doesn't often know what that person is going through at that time.
Absolutely. And okay, so that we have gaming and we have social media. We'll get to the social media part of it. I want to talk about that, but let's talk about gaming. And I'm working on an episode now where I'm interviewing gamers because I've been so fascinated in the ruthlessness of these gamers and the gaming chats. And uh, gamers are telling me every time they play, they hear go kill yourself over and over and over. And I've asked gamers, what do people really mean when they say that? And I'll get responses like, oh, we just mean you're really bad at the game and you shouldn't play the game. And then gamers will comment to that and say, no, I really mean go kill yourself. It's just horrible, horrific behavior on these gaming chats. And parents who have younger kids now or teenagers are having to decide, do I let my kids play online games, especially where they can communicate with strangers, but kids at school where a lot of this cyberbullying happens? Do you feel like online gaming is a safe space if you prepare your kid, or what are your thoughts on the online gaming communities?
When we were going through it 8 years ago,
Yeah,
9 years ago,
yeah,
um, I didn't really understand how it all worked. Like it used to be where we would walk into a store, and we would
hmm
buy a game, and
hmm
they would play it on the Xbox, and they were, playing it by themselves, right?
right,
And then
Totally.
it evolved, and it evolved so quickly. And there was so much of it that I didn't understand. What I do know is that when in my specific situation, in David's situation,
Hmm.
he was on YouTube quite a bit, learning how to get better at these games. Like,
Okay.
he found his identity
Hmm.
in who he was, his gaming status.
Hmm.
And yeah, he put a lot of effort into getting better at these
Hmm.
games, and like buying virtual assets to increase his player power.
Right.
That, I think, is what for him was so damaging when the cyberbullying did start.
Hmm.
Like his online persona was so important to him, and
Hmm.
he was just crushed when
Hmm.
he started getting targeted online.
Yeah. I mean, that was everything to him. And teenagers at that age, they need that peer acceptance and they seek it. I mean, and their brains are trying to separate from their parents. That's the whole goal. And so they seek acceptance from their peers. And
Right.
then when their peers are not accepting them and putting them down, it's unbearable often. And I hear this all the time. Um, okay, so the gaming chat. So there's that. So let's talk about social media. So he was experiencing the cyberbullying through Instagram. Um, so you went to the Senate. Let's start here. You went to the Senate hearing last week with the big tech CEOs, correct?
Yes.
And Mark Zuckerberg started his opening statement trying to explain that there is actually not a connection between social media use and mental health issues. How did you feel when he said that?
I was, I felt I was so insulted by his comments, and we all know that that is not true. The
I
science is shows
know.
that there is a causation, and I can just speak from my own family's experience.
Sure, I
In
know.
seeing what happened, David was anxious and depressed when he, after a period of time of being addicted to social media and online gaming. There is no doubt in our minds of what he was experiencing.
Right. Okay. I mean, I agree. And the research does exist, and it's flabbergasting that he doesn't, his advisors aren't telling him, you can't say that, because not only is there research, but ask any parent. Ask any parent that's kid uses social media if they are happier using social media or prior to using social media. Um, and so with Instagram specifically, so it's been since 2015 that David was using it. Have you noticed any changes around the safety of the Instagram platform or the prevalence of cyberbullying in your, advocacy, or are you feeling like it's better or worse? Like, what's the status of the cyberbullying on Instagram specifically?
That's a great question. We're in the schools. We work in Texas, and we're in the schools, and we do lessons and work closely with school districts. We often hear from administrators in schools
Yeah.
asking us if we know somebody from Instagram, because you may have heard about these T accounts that got set up back during
Mm-hmm.
COVID, where they were basically the old fashioned gossip pages, where they were
Mm-hmm.
posting rumors about students online, and sometimes they would post rumors about teachers and administrators online. But these
Mm-hmm.
kids were in distress, and rumors were being spread. I mean, it was terrible things that were being said, and they were moderated. It was an anonymous Instagram account people would submit, and then the moderator or owner of the account would post these things, and it would be related to a school. So it would be, spill the tea, Central High School, or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
school's name was. And so we would have administrators reaching out to us and ask us, do you know anybody at Instagram? Like, we've got children in crisis right now that are struggling and are contemplating suicide, or in mental health distress. We need to get this information taken down.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it's against their community standards. I mean, cyberbullying can be a crime in Texas. We did that, and that's part of David's law.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we expect those social media platforms to follow their community standards, but also follow the laws that are out there. And so it just becomes a problem. And I'll have students will reach out and tell me that they block and they report, and that still stays up.
Okay. And you have meta executives and staff members saying that if something gets reported and it's against community guidelines, it gets taken down. But in your experience, that's not true.
No.
Okay.
I mean, it may happen sometimes, but like,
Yeah.
we don't have the data. Like, we don't know how many reports are out there and how
Mm-hmm.
many get taken down. My
Right.
guess is that they may take down a few,
Right.
but it is not the number of reports for sure.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg was once quoted saying, the closer something is to violating our community standards, the more engagement that it gets.
Yeah.
So they want to leave that stuff up if it's even questionable to them, because it gets more engagement, more eyeballs, more money for them,
Absolutely.
all at the expense of the mental health of our children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's their
great.
business model.
Right. Great. Okay. So we're talking about Instagram, but is there other specific platforms that where online bullying is happening from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's happening across all the platforms. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
hear it often from the parents that reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
Snapchat, Discord, you name it, it's happening across all of the platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And, parents are just I mean, they're just exhausted and they
Yeah.
can't keep up with all of the different platforms, how to report, how to keep their kids safe. I mean, it is an ongoing problem for parents, and they're trying to work and they're trying to hold their families together. And then they have to navigate through this
Mm-hmm.
maze of safeguards that's different with every platform. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's impossible for parents to keep up.
Absolutely. Not only it's another challenge that we have now, that we have no experience with ourselves. We didn't grow up on these platforms, so we are learning them on the back end of our kids having issues on them and trying to reactively help them. All right, so social media platforms, are cyberbullying on every single one. My question is, so I have 3 children, 8 and under. They're not asking for social media yet, but I'm sure they will soon. And should I let them have access to social media is my question for you.
Mhm. I would say wait as long as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And your children, and your children are all different, right? And there's going to be some that are a child that can self-regulate better than another child.
Mm-hmm.
And so just not having a hard rule and says that, when you're 13, you're able to get it. It's, when you're ready, and working with your child when you decide that the time is ready, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe giving them, one app and sitting with them. It's like driving a car, right? You're going to walk through all of the safeguards, make sure they're safe, understand how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and navigate through it. But have them also be at an age where they can articulate to you like why they need it, what they're going to use it for, how it's
Yeah.
going to help them meet their goals in life, and what they're not in life, but like
Mm-hmm.
what are their
Yeah.
current goals, right?
Yeah.
And how it can be used for good, and then to recognize what those signs are of where it can be
Mm-hmm.
used for bad, and what they're going to do once they see something. I mean, they will see something
Yeah.
for sure that is
Right.
going to be bad, but giving them the tools and the resources, and to
Mm-hmm.
know that they can come to you no matter what. You're not going to take their device away. You're going to help them process it and get through it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to make sure that you're monitoring it
Yeah.
throughout the whole process.
Yes, it can't be hands off, and those communications have to be happening constantly. And I just think my kids are going to have a hard time convincing me that there's going to be positive benefit to their use. I am using Instagram to promote this podcast and this message. And I just right now before this call, I got a message from someone saying, but you're active on Instagram. So is Instagram better than the other platforms? And it's just for me about getting in front of the people who are on there who are likely giving it to their children in order to spread these messages. Adults get to decide that, but this 12 and 13 age limit, or age, for the kids to get access to social media is just, for me, just generally too young. I don't think any child is ready at that age. But thank you for that feedback. And so what about gaming? So, you didn't have a great experience with David and his gaming activity, and I don't think it's gotten much better since then. So, should I let my kids play online games?
I mean, I think that it's kind of the same thing. It's like, are
Yeah.
your children, are they ready for it? And when they are, it's like this slow process. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, playing games with you as a family and what can y'all do
Mm-hmm.
together? And
Yeah.
then navigating through some of those difficult situations and bringing it
Mm-hmm.
up. It's having those constant conversations with them about what they're experiencing, even if it's just not the negative, it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
good did you see in that
Yeah.
today?
Yeah.
And as they get older, the conversation changes. One thing that I've learned in all of the work that we do in the schools is the older teens, they see what their younger siblings and younger cousins are hearing, and they're
Mm-hmm.
telling me like it's so much worse now than it
Mm-hmm.
was when they were that age. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're a little bit more protective, so it's like engaging the older siblings and older
Mm.
cousins to make sure that they're watching and helping that younger child
Yeah,
navigate through all of that.
absolutely. Um, okay, so let's touch back on online bullying in general. Um, even as I grew up, I didn't have access to social media. Kids got cell phones at 16, 17. They were kind of newer, and we just used them because we were driving and we needed to. I don't even think they had maps on them, to be honest, but it was more of a safety tool. So we may have been bullied, for example, but it was in person and we could get away from it when we got home. Um, Obviously, there's a big difference now between online bullying and in person bullying. Um, I would say pretty confidently that online bullying is more dangerous, can be more dangerous. Would you agree with that? What do you think the main
Yeah.
differences are? Like, how can we start to understand, as people who have not experienced online bullying, likely, what our kids are going through?
I 100%.
Yeah.
I think the 24/7 in the privacy of your own bedroom, you
Mm-hmm.
can't get away from it. You can't reach into that device and make
Mm-hmm.
that person stop. Just the environment, the online environment creates this what's called an imbalance of power, which is usually what you'll hear in a legal definition of bullying or cyberbullying in like education code.
Mm.
And so, not being able to have any control in that situation to be able to stop it creates that imbalance of power. The fact that it can be spread
Mm-hmm.
so rapidly, and like in David's case, right, it just got spread and there were all these people involved. So you can have this cyber mob and then it lives out there basically forever, right?
Right.
So even if you
Mm-hmm.
could get it shut down for a period of time, in the back of the child's mind, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
when is it going to rear its head again? Because it
Yeah.
was either screenshotted or it went dormant and it's going to pop back up. And I can tell you that has happened quite a bit in the work that we've done here in Texas. We have seen things go dormant and then something will happen and it'll come back up. And then the
Mm-hmm.
person is re victimized and re traumatized by what
That's
is happening
frightening.
out there.
Yeah, that's frightening. And I mean, this is also one of the reasons why. So, my husband and I do not share our children online, because you hear stories of the content that you share around your kid, an embarrassing little video or something that's funny at the time, but can be used later on as well for cyberbullying. Like, things can always come back around and be found. Um, Okay, so you mentioned that David didn't tell you guys about the bullying because he didn't want you to take away his games and his phone. And that's like the number one reason I hear why kids don't tell their parents. Um, what would you recommend to parents, knowing that they're probably not going to tell us? how do we create a safe space, or how do we get through to them, or are we kind of out of luck when it comes to getting them to tell us about it?
I think that you can, if you create a contract with them,
Mm-hmm.
when they get their cell phone, and you let them know that they can come to you no matter what they experience online, and
Mm-hmm.
that you will not take away their device unless they are, perpetuating that, cyberbullying
Yeah.
or whatever else it is in your household that you hold true to.
Right.
So talking about your values and your family, what's your family motto, and how all of that plays into the online lives
Mm-hmm.
of us as family members, and just set the expectation that, and knowing as a parent, so if your child comes to you and
Mm-hmm.
they've experienced something online, whether it's pornography or cyberbullying, whatever it is, that you take a deep breath
Mm-hmm.
and step back and not go into, crazy mom mode,
Yeah.
and that they will know, okay, mom's not going to overreact. She's going to help me get through it, and I'm going to have a conversation with her about
Mm-hmm.
it. I think if we can set that expectation and really follow through with that, and I know it's hard, as a
Mm-hmm.
parent, when you see what your children are experiencing online, you want to go into crazy mom mode, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want, first thing you want to do is rip that device out of their hand and say no more. But we can't, it's
Yeah.
really recommended that we don't do that,
Yeah. If
because
we
then they
freak
won't come to
out,
you. Yeah,
yeah,
they're not going to come to
exactly.
you in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you freak out, they're not going to come to you. I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen it myself. And okay, so are there signs we can look for though to recognize maybe if there's bullying happening with our child? Any signs we can look for?
I mean, I think, is your child using their device more frequently?
Mm-hmm.
Are they using it less frequently? Are they anxious when they're looking at their device? Are they
Mm-hmm.
sleeping well? Are they eating? Any kind of change in their behavior? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I always tell parents, you know your child better than anyone. If you see any change in their behavior, talk to your pediatrician. Most of
Mm-hmm.
us are not trained psychologists,
Right.
but we are moms, and we do know when something just does not seem right with our kid.
Mm-hmm.
So your first line of defense is talking to your pediatrician, and letting them know, because they have a good tools to be able to
Yeah.
assess what's going on.
Yeah. I think too, like a school counselor too, might be a good way, step in the right direction. Yeah, not to ignore it or put it off as like teenage angst. If I feel like our spidey senses and our mommy senses, we need to pay attention more than ever.
It's really hard to determine whether or not it's just typical teenage angst, or if there's something really going on with your kid.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you've been working to try to prevent bullying, and I wonder if you have any on top of mind success stories where, not really success, but if a child was being bullied, they reported it, it was addressed and resolved. Does that happen? And does anything come to mind around that?
Well, in Texas, we worked really hard on providing tools to schools, parents, and law enforcement to be able to address cyberbullying and bullying.
Okay.
And since then, we help hundreds of families every single year.
Mm,
And there have been often situations where we'll have a family will reach out to us and say, I went in to report an incident of bullying and or cyberbullying, and the school administrator said, because of David's law, we can take action on this
mm,
particular situation. So probably the most important provision in David's law was that it gives schools the authority to address cyberbullying that occurs off campus if it materially affects a student's ability to learn or go to school.
yeah.
And so that particular provision has really helped a lot of parents. We also
Hmm.
do legal services, and we help families with pro bono legal. And, there was one particular situation several years ago where there was an anonymous Snapchat. I think, yeah, it was Snapchat, where
Mm-hmm.
the person had started a user in a young girl's name and was soliciting sexual material from other
Mm.
students in
Okay.
her name.
Mm-hmm.
And they reached out to us. We were able to, get file a restraining order, get that from the Snapchat, get the information from Snapchat, sue Snapchat, and then we unsuited Snapchat. Then we had to sue AT&T to get the IP address. And so it was this long, drawn out legal process that took a long time, but the end result was positive. We were able to get it taken down. We were able to identify that perpetrator.
Amazing that you're providing those services, because God forbid Snapchat just take it down because it violates community standards in the
Well, we
first
reached
place.
out to them first friendly and asked them if they would turn it over first, and they said no. So we had to file a suit.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing. Um, okay. And do other states have similar laws like David's law?
Yeah, there are. I think every single state has, a bullying policy, and most of them include cyberbullying. I don't know of any other state that has addressed it from the way that we did was,
Mm-hmm.
education code, civil code, and criminal code
Mm-hmm.
to deal with it.
Okay. We were introduced through Kristen Bride, Carson Bride's mom, and they were able to get Carson's law enacted there in Oregon. Is that the similar law?
I I believe that Carson's law it has a reporting piece in there that's
Okay.
that is similar to what we had in David's law,
Okay.
but our David's law is it was pretty big. I mean,
More
we
detailed.
affected a lot of different codes. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
it has a lot of provisions in it, and actually, probably one of the other main pieces of it is that not only just the reporting piece, but it also required every school district in the state of Texas to have an anonymous reporting tool.
Mm,
And so we've really found that that has been meaningful because we heard from students that they
hmm.
wanted to report these incidents, but they were afraid to do that.
Sure.
So back in 2017, they were required to have an anonymous reporting tool.
Okay. What's smartphone use like in schools in Texas? Are they banning phones in schools? How's it looking over there?
I don't know about full bans, but
Yeah.
we do know that a lot of school districts are having the students come in and put their phones up for, during the classroom day. Maybe they can
Yep.
pick them up after the end of the day. It just varies. We give school districts a lot of flexibility in
Hmm.
Texas.
Okay.
Um, and I speak to a lot of superintendents, and those that do have those types of rules in place have said that they have seen such great, positive outcomes where the
Hmm.
students are engaging with one another more friendly,
Yep.
and they are turning in their homework on
Hmm.
time. Like they are really encouraged by
Hmm.
that. But of course, one of the biggest hurdles is the parents. And as you know, in Texas, we've had, a couple of just horrific school shootings here.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so parents are on high alert. They want to be able to get in touch with their students. And so, what the superintendents will tell me is they will tell their parents, look, let me just try it, and
Hmm.
let's just do a test, and let's see. And I'm going to put all these other precautions in place to make sure that you understand that we're going to keep your kids physically safe here in our
Hmm.
schools.
Yeah.
But let's see what happens when we put these devices up. And they have just said that it has just been remarkable.
Yeah. I hear that too. And even sometimes I've heard from some school districts that bullying has gone down as well, because they're not able to do those things like you mentioned, those T profiles, and they're sharing photos of kids embarrassing things during school because they have access to their phones.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Since David's Law, we've seen a reduction in bullying and cyberbullying across the state of Texas. Bullying is reduced by almost 20% and
wow.
cyberbullying by 19%.
That is amazing, Maureen. I love that. And I hope that states are on the road, all states are on the road to passing similar legislation. Um, I mean, I only hear great things about the, you know, banning phones in schools or at least making the kids put them away during instructional time. I also hear the parents' complaints about the school shootings, but I've spoken with professionals that are like, it actually, if your kid has a phone in their hand, it makes it much more dangerous in a school shooting situation for them. So there's a strong case against them having their phones in those situations. Um, very complicated topic, but I love having your opinion on it. Um, Okay, let's start to wrap up. I would love to ask if you could share a favorite memory that you have of David.
Oh, I would say probably our favorite memories of David are when we were on family vacations.
Mm,
And, we would go to Colorado and we would go hiking and we would go, to tropical places and we would go to the beach. And David's favorite place was Atlantis.
mm-hmm,
And we always talked about going back. And I just, when you're on vacation, all of your worries seem to go away and
mm-hmm,
those memories will stay with us forever.
mm-hmm. Have you been able to go back to Atlantis?
No, it's too
No.
hard for us to go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. When I ask this question of parent survivors, I almost always get a memory of a vacation, especially an outdoor hiking or something outdoors. And I think it's an interesting reminder and special reminder for parents to get off the grind and take your kids outdoors and do some outdoor vacations whenever you can, because those memories, when you are right, you're unplugged and you're just with each other, and that lasts forever, those memories.
They do.
Maureen, thank you so much for sharing
Sure,
that with
Nikki.
me.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything that you are doing to encourage people on COSA.
Yeah.
That's really the main work that we're doing right now, and we know that the work that we've done in Texas is not enough. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been fighting the social media companies for 8 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and they've lobbied against me here in Texas, and they are, of course, lobbying against COSA at the
Yep.
federal level, and
Yep.
just appreciate everything that you're doing there.
You're welcome, Maureen. So, Kids Online Safety Act is important online safety legislation for children. It's got a lot of great stuff in there. I've talked about it in many different interviews. One good one is with Alex Fraser of Issue One. And he talks about, the pushback, and it kind of all digs into it for you. So listeners can go there and listen to it. You know, that was a focus of the hearing. The Senate hearing last week was trying to get these tech CEOs to give support for these bills, and across the board, most did not give. Well, none gave support. Oh, Snap gave support for COSA. We'll see what they actually do when it comes to spending millions of dollars to send their lobbyists in to vote against it. But so, are you sending people to passcosa.org, or is there a different site you want to recommend?
We've been sending people to Fair Play, to
Okay.
their site. Yeah.
Okay.
And, I think our message is to Congress is,
Mm-hmm.
we've heard these hearings. This was the 10th hearing. Voices get raised and they wag their finger at the CEOs,
Yeah.
and we're done with that. Now Congress needs to act.
Yeah.
And, there's an election this year. This is a big, big issue for parents and families. And we
Mm-hmm.
need Congress on board to do what they can do, specifically asking Senator Schumer to bring COSA to a floor vote here
Mm-hmm.
within the next couple of months, so that we can get a Senate vote. And I'm very confident that we're going to see it pass out of the Senate. But we need him
Okay.
to do that.
Okay, so parents can go to Fair Play's website, learn about COSA, and can you also there find out if your state senator supports the bill and then make a request if they don't?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
And the other thing too is like people can go to parentssos.org,
okay.
which is an education initiative that David's Legacy Foundation and Fair Play have come together, and it shares the stories of 20 families who have
Mm-hmm.
lost children to online harms. And there's also a link on there for them to be able to that takes them to the Fair Play site. So one
Okay,
stop shop at
yeah.
parentssos.org.
Okay. Okay, I'll include that in the episode notes. And it really is, you guys make it really easy to contact our state senators. It took me like 2 minutes just to say, hey, can you please support COSA? It's important for me and my family. Um,
Mhm.
and there's really no more important issue here, you guys. Like, it's cyberbullying is just one dangerous element to these online platforms. There's sextortion. There's what am I missing?
Dangerous online challenges,
There's online
the
challenges, the choking challenge in my book.
pedophiles and drug dealers online.
Drug dealers, you guys. Like, there's so much that we need to be thinking about, and these platforms just need to be made safer and have some liability, right? So that we have a little bit of an easier job as a parent in protecting our children. Okay, so again, Maureen, thank you so much for sharing your story and for introducing us to David. I really appreciate everything you do so that the world is just safer for our children. It's so important, and thank you again.
Thank you, Nikki.